again, third graders. We are going to share some more of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, written by William Kamkwamba and Brian Mueller. And we're doing so with the very gracious permission of the publisher, Puffin Books. So today we are going to share pages 196 through 207. The last time that we read, it was a very exciting part of the book. The windmill is built, and at the very end of what we read, William and his cousin and friend went out and built a huge stand to put the functioning piece of the windmill on top of. And this stand is going to be about 15 feet high, so it will be able to really capture the wind. Or harness, you might say. So let's begin. I could barely sleep that night and was out the door before the rooster even crowed. When I rounded the kitchen, Gilbert and Geoffrey were already standing by the tower. "Look who decided to sleep late," Geoffrey said. I was so happy to see them. The windmill's frame weighed about 90 pounds, and the only way to hoist it up the tower was by rope and pulley. I didn't have any rope, so I had to borrow my mother's wire clothesline instead. I fastened one end to a crude handle that I made on the windmill from a piece of bamboo. I climbed the tower with the other end and looped it over the top rung, then dropped it down to Gilbert. From where I stood, I could see over the trees to where the patchwork of fields and forest joined the highlands. "Okay, Gilbert," I yelled, "bring it up." Slowly, he began to pull. The bamboo handle lifted in the air, followed by the large gangly... Hold on a minute, the cat's trying to drink my water. Moxie! Oh, sorry about that. "Okay, Gilbert," I yelled, "bring it up." Slowly, he began to pull. The bamboo handle lifted in the air, followed by the large gangly frame. "Easy now." Geoffrey stood below me on a lower rung to guide the machine as it climbed. The three of us now pulled with all of our strength. "Come on, guys," I shouted. "Let's see some muscle." "I'm pulling as hard as I can," said Gilbert, straining under the weight. "Don't let it slip, Geoffrey." With each pull, the windmill lurched sideways and banged its cumbersome blades against the wood. A couple of times, they got stuck in the rungs, and Geoffrey had to knock them loose. Little by little, it made its way up the tower. After half an hour, we finally had it close to the top. When it came within reach, I grabbed the handle and screamed to Gilbert, "Tie it down!" Gilbert looped the wire around the base pole, and the windmill held. Geoffrey joined me at the top to secure the machine in place. The day before, we'd drilled 2 holes in the wooden poles. My hot nail drill wasn't big enough, so I had to use flat bolts instead, a process that took hours. We'd also asked Mr. Godston, he's the welder, to cut 2 matching holes in the bicycle's crossbar with his welding gun. Standing atop the tower, Geoffrey fished the nuts and bolts from his pockets while I held the frame and tried to align the holes. I could feel it slipping. "Hurry! This thing is heavy," I said. Geoffrey slid in the bolts and tightened them with a wrench. Once everything was fastened, we looked at each other and smiled. The machine felt sturdy and very strong. While Geoffrey made his way down the tower, I remained atop my perch to take in the scenery. To the north, I could see the iron sheet roofs of the trading center and the rows of brown huts that sat behind the market. As I admired the view, I noticed something strange. A line of people had emerged and were heading in my direction. They must have seen the tower from the distance and were curious to have a look. "We have visitors," I said. Within minutes, a dozen people gathered at the base and gazed up at the machine. I recognized a few of them as traders and shopkeepers. One was named Kalino. "What is this thing?" he asked. Since there's no word in Chippewa for windmill, I use the phrase "Majesti Amifpo," electric wind, I answered. "What does it do?" "Generates electricity from the wind." "That's impossible," Kalino said, laughing. He turned to get a reaction from the crowd. It looks like a radio tower, and what kind of silly toy is that? Well, I said, just stand back and watch. I climbed down from the tower and ran into my room for the final piece. That morning, I'd found a thick reed and cut a section about 10 inches long. I then wrapped a long copper wire around the base of a headlamp bulb and strung it through, creating a light socket. Holding the socket and bulb, I climbed the tower and connected their wires to one from the dynamo. As I worked, more and more people arrived, and I could hear their chatter. "What do you suppose he's doing now?" asked a farmer named Banda. "This is the misala from the scrapyard my children were talking about." Another man answered, "Think about his poor mother." Peering out, I saw my parents and sisters at the back of the crowd. Their eyes were wide and their jaws hung slightly open, the way some soccer fans look when clustered around a radio, except this time, it was me who had the ball with only seconds left on the clock. My hands trembled from nerves, but I was confident. I'd prepared for this moment for months. "Let's see how crazy this boy really is," I heard someone shout. A steady wind whistled through the tower, mixing the smells of chain grease and melted plastic. Even though the wheel remained locked, the machine groaned against the breeze as if begging me to release it. I looked down at Gilbert and Jeffrey and nodded. Here it goes, I thought. I jerked the wheel loose and the blades began to spin. The chain snapped tight against the crankset and the tire slowly turned. Everything happened in slow motion. "Come on," I said. "Don't embarrass me now." Just then, a strong gust flung me backwards. The tower began to rock, so much that I wrapped my elbow around a rung just to hang on. Inches above my head, the blades began to buzz like a set of angry propellers. I clutched the bulb, waiting for my miracle. Then it came. A flicker, a flash, then a burst of bright, magnificent light. My heart nearly exploded. "Look!" someone shouted. "He's made light!" "It's true what he said!" A group of children pushed through the crowd. "Look how it spins! Let me see!" I threw my hands into the air and shouted with joy, laughing so hard that I became dizzy. I held the bulb in triumph and addressed the unbelievers. "Electric wind!" I shouted. "I told you I wasn't mad!" One by one, the people began to cheer. They waved their hands and shouted, "Well done! You did it, William!" "That's right," I said, "and now I'm going bigger. Just wait and see." The crowd shouted questions, then gathered around Gilbert and Jeffrey, grilling them for details. Those two guys, they couldn't stop grinning. I stayed on the tower, listening to the blades and taking in the scene. I finally came down when the bulb started to burn my hand. My wire wasn't long enough to use the bulb anywhere but the windmill. So late in the afternoon, I attached it to the top rung and left it. I was still so high from the experience that I went to the trading center to burn off some energy and relish in the glory. Once I reached the market stalls, I looked back to the valley and saw the light still flickering through the heat waves. "What is that thing?" said a man nearby, clutching a sack of tomatoes. "It's catching the wind, just like a helicopter." The tomato seller was my mother's friend, Maggie. "Well, the owner is right here. Why don't you ask him?" "Is it true?" he said. "How is that possible?" I explained it to him the way I did everyone. "I still don't understand," he said. "I need to come see it for myself." For the next month, about 30 people arrived each day to stare up at the light. Think about how novel and new this experience must be for all these people. "How did you manage such a thing?" they all asked. "Hard work and lots of research," I replied, trying not to sound too smug. Many of them were traveling businessmen from other districts. To them, the windmill became a kind of roadside attraction while passing through Wimbay. Other people came from outer villages with chickens and maize strapped to their bicycles. Women balancing sacks of flour on their heads stopped and spoke with my mother. God has blessed you, one said. You have a child who can perform wonders. You'll never complain about kerosene again. So remember, they used kerosene for the lanterns. That was the light source that they're accustomed to using. The men approached my father. Your son made this? Yes. Where did he get such ideas? From books. They teach this in school? No, he did this on his own. Think about that. My goodness. That month, I helped clear the fields and prepare them for planting, working each day with joy in my heart. If I was in the field near the windmill, I would pause in between swings of my hoe and just watch it spin. One night, I was playing bow-wow with Jeffrey and Gilbert near the barber shop when the lights went out from a power cut. While everyone was cursing the dark, I snuck home and connected the bulb, then ran back. Oh, I hate these power cuts, a man complained, leaving the barber shop with only half a haircut. What power cuts? I said with a smile. Have you chaps seen my house? Mr. Aponga, the barber, leaned out his shop, still clutching his dead clippers. William, I think you take pride in our power cuts just so you can boast about your electric wind. Perhaps, William said. So remember, the electricity that Wimbay does have, that's provided by EBSCOM, it's not reliable. So that's why they have power outages from time to time. The next month, I started working on lighting my house using the windmill. To do this, I needed loads and loads of electrical wire. But as usual, I had no money to buy any. Then one afternoon, Gilbert and I were at Charity's house when I noticed long sections of copper-insulated wire, the very kind I needed. It was being used as a clothing line to dry clothes on. So remember Charity. Charity is his older cousin. In fact, a whole spool of the stuff sat in the corner of the room. Amen, I said to Charity. How can you play around with this wire when I need it so much? Someone had given it to him as a payment for doing day work, he said. But since you're my cousin, I'll give it to you at a discount. I was on my way to the training center to look for a job when Gilbert pulled out 100 kwacha and gave it to Charity. Just like that, I had 30 meters of copper wire. I promise I'll pay you back, Gilbert, I said. Don't worry about it, he responded. Just put lights in your room. Once again, when all hope seemed lost, Gilbert came to the rescue. Think about what a good friend Gilbert has been through this process. He's funded a lot of the windmill. Whenever William was short on money to buy the parts he needed, Gilbert has stepped up and provided whatever was needed. I ran home, clutching the heavy spool. As I flew down the trail and into the valley, I could see the windmill spinning in the distance. Now, every time I saw it, my stomach did a flip. I unspooled the wire enough to measure the distance from the windmill to my room, then clipped it with my knife. Clutching one end, I climbed the tower. A windmill in motion was a hazardous work environment. The blades were spinning so fast I had to be careful, or else I'd end up with a haircut. Also, the dynamo was producing real electricity. As I unhooked the bulb and attached the new wire, I was mindful not to cross them or I'd get a shock. To be extra safe, I wrapped a jumbo bag, which is plastic and doesn't conduct electricity, around the junction where the wires were held together. The roof of my bedroom was made from pallets of grass wrapped in plastic sheeting, each supported by several wooden beams. Standing on a ladder, I wrapped a wire 2 turns around the middle beam, the one nearest my bed, then popped a hole through the pallet and lowered it down into my room. Inside, I made some final attachments, then pulled the bulb from my pocket. I may not be touching the wall to get light, I thought, thinking back to Gilbert's light switch, but this is close enough. I connected the reed and bulb, and in an instant, my room was illuminated. I ran to the door and slammed it closed, then marveled at the new electricity. For the first time ever, I had my own lighted space. That evening, after supper, I laid in bed and just stared up at the bulb. It flickered yellow to the rhythm of the spinning blades outside, bright enough to read the library books I'd stacked up around me. I heard a knock at the door, and soon my family had crowded into my room. "Look, it's William, staying up past the dark," my father said. "Congratulations," said my mother. "We'd also like to have lights in our rooms. Think you can manage?" "Only if you're okay with having electricity generated by a madman." She laughed. "You proved us all wrong in the end. But I'll admit it, I did worry." My sister rose, then asked, "What if the wind stops blowing?" It was an important question. "Well, the light will go off," I said, "and I'll be stranded. That's why I had a plan to get some batteries. More specifically, I needed something like a car battery so that I could store power for the times when the wind was calm. A car battery was also big enough to power the entire house. Once I had one, my family could finally toss out those kerosene lamps and live like modern people. And lights were just the first step. The next windmill would pump water for our fields and give us more food. Windmills would be our front line against hunger. The first night with light, I stayed awake reading the book explaining physics, trying to prepare for my next step. I read for hours, long after everyone else was asleep, while the termites feasted on the roof and the clouds of red dust pushed under the door. As usual, a strong wind was blowing. So a couple questions to consider. Think back to when the folks are initially gathering around the windmill and one of William's town members asked, "What is this?" And William didn't have a word in his language for windmill, so he had to say that it was electric wind. Why do you think there was no word for windmill? And another thing to consider is the phrase that William says right towards the end, that the windmill was going to be their front line against hunger. What does that mean? So think about those things, and we will continue reading the next section soon. Have a great day.